Welcome to the Reejig Skills Masterclass. This is where we unbundle work one industry at a time. Reejig is sitting on an incredible amount of information about what's happening across work. So we want to make sure that we're giving it out to folks to help you understand what's happening in the world of work. Today's session is all about the finance industry, one of the most critical sectors globally as it powers economies and innovation. I'm Siobhan Savage. I'm the CEO of Reejig, and I'm joined here by Mike Reed, who is our Chief Product Officer and our in-house work ontology expert. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Siobhan, excited about this one. I'm excited about them all, but
Me
then I
too. I
love
think
this
we say
stuff.
this every week, though. So people that are watching this all the time, like you might hear us. We're very excited all the time about lots of things. So we're here to simplify the complexities of the finance industry using the Reejig data to help you unlock workforce potential. We're going to dive into what's happening right now, and we're going to help you build a bold and responsible workforce strategy for your own workforce. So let's get started. Now, on the agenda today, we are going to dive into first what's happening within the finance industry itself, explore what the CEOs and leaders are prioritizing, and we're going to discuss how to build a bold and responsible workforce strategy. We'll look at practical strategies to reinvent your workforce. We're going to dive into some examples, and then we're going to wrap up with some key takeaways and some personalized opportunity for you to take some action. Mike will cover off the data in depth, and I'll add a little bit of flavor to it, or probably some like spicy opinions. And we'll guide you through the stories and the strategies that we're seeing today within the data itself. So from a finance industry, so the global finance industry plays a pivotal role in enabling growth and innovation. The finance sector employs millions of people globally and is seeing an increase in integration of AI and the automation to meet rising customer expectations. They're looking at a lot of cost optimization, the reduction of operational risk. In the US alone, the financial services contribute significantly to the GDP. With AI augmenting services like risk management, fraud detection, and customer service, it'll be really interesting, Mike, to hear what you're seeing in your data. But the industry is leaning into automation. So apparently with 25% of routine jobs, such as loan processing, customer service impact, there is it's a quarter of the workforce impact, which is a pretty substantial scale of disruption. And then 16% growth within the fintech jobs during 2023, which is really interesting to see that data point, given a lot of what we're hearing across cost optimization, velocity, operational efficiency, whatever way you want to describe cutting costs. We've heard a lot within the finance sector. So to hear that actually the jobs increased by 16%, but I think in the data, it was driven mostly from blockchain and payment processing. Is that what you were seeing?
Yeah, it's so finance is really interesting to look at from the outside because I guess a lot of the communities had the experiences of branches closing. So I've kind of seen this push towards rationalization and digital banking over a while. And that the closure of branches, that kind of manifests an industry that is facing forward into digital change. So traditional finance, traditional banking has been moving into this area for a while. At the same time, they've got this decentralized finance model with blockchain coming in. They've got online payment providers coming in. They've got payment processing. They've got a growth in security, cybersecurity around the risks of holding wealth. So not only has the traditional finance sector moved to a digital platform, but there's all of these fintechs growing up around it. So there's been huge transformation here.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's valued over 22 trillion in 2022, and it's projected to go to 30 trillion as an industry by 2030, which is crazy.
Yeah,
And it
that's where
employs
all
over
the money.
6.3 million. So it's where all the money is, which is why I'm in New
It's where
York.
the it's where the money is. So yeah, you could
Exactly.
measure the value of it, but all of the money ends up in that if it's as it's
No, I
going
love
between
it.
things.
I love it. I love it. One of the as Kirsten, my team calls it, the savage tips that I have keep constantly talking about is that, if you're not reading your earnings calls of your current workforce or even your main competitors, really important for us to really understand from a workforce strategy perspective what's being said at the board level, shareholder, CEO level. We have a pretty decent obsession in the Rejig team for analyzing all of your earnings calls. We love it. We love finding out what's actually really happening and where we're going in the next couple of years. And, we've spent some time analyzing, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Wells Fargo to hear what some of sort of the leading CEOs are saying around sort of what's happening. As you can see, a bit of word cloud on the right of the space, that there is, leaders are laser focused and prioritization on things like cost control, digital transformation, AI integration, and enhancing customer experience. So a lot of what I've heard from talking to a lot of the finance folks is velocity to customer has been like this, like I keep hearing it over and over and over again, which is really interesting. AI integration, the digital transformation of not only their service lines, so becoming, retail banks with like brick and mortar operations to now being, a cloud digital bank. They are turning these massive Navy ships into digital banks, which is incredibly, transformational. And then what does the workforce look like? A lot of the stuff that we're also hearing about is the regulatory compliance, from making sure that the way that money flows between systems and making sure from a cyber and privacy. But, it's really interesting to see that this is really what we're hearing about. Jamie, JP Morgan Chase CEO, emphasizes the importance. It's very public. Since I've come to the US, he's in the press a lot, and he's talking a lot about AI, and he's talking a lot about the importance of AI machine learning for risk management and for fraud detection. David, the CEO of Goldman Sachs, he's been talking a lot about prioritizing and automating back office functions while preserving customer experience. So, a lot of what we're hearing from these folks is really centered around how do they get to their customers faster and win based on customer experience? How do they make sure that they're managing fraud and risk? And how do they speed up work to worker? And I think a lot of what we care about is really centered around that. So it was great to have those chats. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Charlie, for your insights. We really appreciate it.
What was interesting here on the right hand side, like it's usually just like alternating colors for the word cloud, but this time it was the top 8 concerns across all issues that CEOs have faced, and it's really only inflation and M&A, which don't directly have a workforce implication. All of the others were directly linked to the future requirements of the workforce.
I would challenge you on inflation. Inflation would have an impact onto your workforce strategy, because, like, if money is more expensive and things are more expensive, they're going to have to find and shift budget around, which typically means there would be cost reductions or finding new ways to do the same amount of work, or like pedal faster for the same amount. So I would actually say inflation, you've seen a lot of the drastic cuts that happened within the tech sector directly linked to, the cost of money now. So I would say I would probably slightly politely disagree with you that they do have impacts. And the most interesting thing that I have found on my journey of all things work ontology, and thinking about this new workforce, that everyone is wanting to reinvent. There is a complete reinvention of workforce that's happening. And whether customers and companies are thinking about it, in the middle of doing it, or just about to get started doing it, that all of them need to create sort of this bold reinvention. Day zero thinking is really important if you want to completely pivot your business. And the use of AI and velocity and speed and operational efficiency are all these things that everyone's really focused on right now. And what we're saying is absolutely, how do we enable that to happen? How do we help you design and build a really bold workforce strategy that enables your CEO to do those things, while at the same time as making sure that you are being really responsible? You need to make sure that when you're thinking about AI, when you're thinking about this new workforce DNA, how do we make sure that we give everyone access to meaningful work? None of these CEOs want to be in the press for harvesting people out of jobs. None of these CEOs want to be in a situation where they're not giving folks access to meaningful work. So the bold and responsible strategy has to be really important for all of these leaders, because they've got to do both at the same time. And this is where you all online come in play. This is where you really sit, and this is where you need to step up and own this bold and responsible workforce strategy to enable, this access to meaningful work for everyone. Now, when we're talking about building bold and responsible workforces, there's kind of 3 key core pillars that I talk about. 1, how do we help you reinvent your workforce? Understand the work that's happening within your company. Understand, actually what is the tasks, the skills required to do those tasks, and then look at where is the task duplication, where's the workforce bloat existed, where is AI got the highest potential to think about AI automation. So we're not just talking AI, we're talking about robotics as well. So where do the tasks have the highest potential based on cost or pain? And then how do you think about using that data to reinvent your workforce and design this new way of thinking? Then what you want to be able to do is move your work to worker in order for you to increase velocity, to speed up work, to create this kind of culture of opportunity. The work has to move to the right worker. And that necessarily doesn't mean your employees. That could be your digital workers as well. So how do we enable this orchestration of work to worker? And then finally, how do you retain, you'll have this talent wars still go on. It'll be in very specific areas that you'll find retention being a real critical issue and a P1 for your businesses. But how do we make sure you can retain, but also pivot your folks into meaningful work by reskilling? This is really kind of the three kind of pillars that we would look at when we think about building a bold and responsible workforce. And some of the things that you need to think about. No longer talent marketplaces are like so last season. They're all about, giving everyone access to democratizing careers. The strategy has shifted, folks. Like, we've got to design it for this new world and make sure that you're building, zero wasted potential into your people, into your business, and also into society as well. Now, when we're sort of talking about the work ontology, before we get into deep dive with the data, I want to sort of step back for a little second and kind of give you all a bit of a cheat sheet to think about. The work ontology was designed from myself and from Mike and others in the team, because what we really started to find was this whole skills-based workforce is not really delivering on what we needed to do for this new world of work. And when you think about it, the work ontology is designed because jobs have tasks. Jobs do not have skills. So if you're inferring skills on job titles or extracting skills from job descriptions, not going to work. Jobs have tasks. AI automates tasks, not skills. So when you're thinking about where to think about robotics, adoption of AI, where it's going to be on the task. And then tasks need skills. So you need to have a triangulation between, what is the actual job, what are the tasks that need to be done, and what are the skills required to complete those tasks. And then finally, people have skills. They also have potential, but people have skills. So it is a very important cheat sheet that you need to take away from these sessions, where when you are thinking about your workforce design, when you are thinking about delivering this new world of work, you need to think about it in this context, because if you are just thinking about skills, it will not work. Sorry to let you know, but it will not work. I've tried, I've been there, few laps around the sun. This becomes your cheat sheet for designing this new world of work. Now, today we're focusing deeply on the finance industry and what the work ontology, and as I said, we have 23 different work ontologies. We break every single job down into tasks, the skills required to complete those tasks. We look at expertise. We look at lots of information around actually what is the work that's being done. And this is just a little bit of an example of sort of some of the insights that we can tell you based on the tasks that are happening. Our view is if we can give you 80% accuracy of the tasks that are being done within each job, within each part of your company, that you'll have an incredible amount of intelligence that you've never had before from a workforce perspective. And when we create your work ontology, what we can start to tell you, and by the way, we're focused right now on the industry, but what we can tell you about your workforce is the AI potential index. So where is the highest potential for AI automation based on the task, not the skills? We then are looking at where is task duplication. So when you think about workforce bloat, there is a whole pile of folks that are working on the same task across the business. You just don't know. You've created this bloat within work to worker. So how do we identify and increase that velocity? So all of that, what Jamie was talking about, that velocity and speed is all about task duplication and removing workforce bloat and creating productivity and really freeing folks up to do the most high value work instead of the kind of boring, crappy tasks over on this side. You then want to think about the AI timeline. So when you think about road mapping, you want to look at what costs me the most money and what causes the most pain, and how far away do we believe we will get value from this AI implementation, because that is really how you design your implementation plan and your roadmap around AI. And then finally, and incredibly important, as you start to think about this new world and redesigning, how do you make sure, whether it's you're removing tasks to free folks up to do more of the more meaningful work, or whether you're bringing in automation or robotics that impact tasks, how do you make sure that you're pivoting folks into the critical roles required. And these critical roles are not just what people believe the future jobs are. These are what is it based on my company that we will move people into that have meaningful work within our organization. Now, Mike, would love you to kind of take us on a bit of a tour of what you've learned around the finance industry and really talk us through sort of the workforce shift and what are the impacts around sort of AI, reskilling. So take over, please.
For sure. Thanks. So what we're looking at is the workforce composition for the total industry. So within those segments, within traditional banking, within insurance, within fintech, within payments, we can imagine that the workforce breakdown is going to be very different. But this is just looking at the kind of headcount that we're talking about across the whole of the finance industry. And we can see the front line, your tellers, your branch management, your customer service, it is still the majority. So 30% of your front line, they've got 20% who are delivering the expertise related to the craft. So your financial analysts, your advisors, your loan officers, your lending officers, your underwriters, those kind of specific technical domains associated with finance. Compliance and risk management is already a large footprint and only growing as there's more complexity around the obligations that financial institutions have. AI and security is already 8%, already a decent footprint. We can, as I said at the outset, finance industry are probably moving quicker than almost any industry apart from the technology industry in adoption of opportunities to improve performance. So AI, data and cyber is already large and only getting larger, and then you've got the balance of roles required to support the industry. The commentary on the left-hand side kind of flags the increasing importance of data science, AI, and cybersecurity, both within traditional finance organizations, but also within the emerging fintech area. But if we look at the broader sense, we can see that your frontline staff are the ones that are going to transitioning in a way that's similar to retail. Your bricks and mortar stores having your cashiers and your point of sale staff transitioning their expertise to support a digital product. That's really where we're going to focus. So we're going to focus on the front line and the financial services support and compliance, the ones that are really tightly linked to finance, and see where they go. What can we do if we're going to be bold and identify the fastest path to improve performance, but then in the responsible, let's also look at those areas and see what we want to do to make sure that those people have got a sustainable career.
Yeah, the front line doesn't surprise me. I was actually expecting it to be a little bit more, but that's really from a sort of composition what we're talking about in terms of the actual skills that folks are focused on right now. It's really interesting.
Yeah, and we could have carved it up different ways. Loan officers sit in their own little bucket where most of those traditionally would have been sitting in a branch. So when we're looking at the areas of greatest opportunity, AI and automation potentially in the finance industry, we see loan officers, we're going to look at financial analysts, so we're going to look at your compliance space. And compliance is also your accountants and your auditors, your risk management. They're the ones that stood out at the top of the pile. Heaps of stuff on here, so I'd suggest everybody send us a DM and say, can I please get that deck? And we can flick you through either the recording or the details
the
afterwards.
graphics are getting better. We're evolving week on week. I like it.
Yep, here we go. There's a lot to capture, and I'm just going to pull out a couple of headlines here. So it's interesting to watch the paths for loan officers. Talk about that in the responsible section. But in terms of the possibility, it really is about the application of AI to big data to monitor changes in markets, in lending profiles, in risk profiles, and do that at scale to deliver high quality faster. Decisions faster, approvals faster. There's a real efficiency gain for the individual, over 50% through in-market products who are delivering this. The direct line to improved revenue can be 10 to 15% through improved approval timeframes, reduced error timeframes, higher levels of compliance achieved. What does this lead? This is expected to lead to like a minor reduction in the headcount here. So let's call it 5% reduction in headcount. The roles are still material though, because this isn't just a black box that looks after all of your business. The involvement now is from the individuals in this space is at a higher level of complexity or escalation. So we're now talking about people having to have the capability to operate not from intern all the way up, but to get the expertise to come in and use these tools to start to work straight into those more complex transactions and support that. This is one of the areas also that's reasonably mature. A lot of focus spent on the money, so a lot of focus spent on these tools. And we've seen some reasonably successful rapid implementations here. So high levels of operational efficiency, reasonably quick to deploy. If we jump into
financial analysts.
Yeah, if we jump into financial analyst, again, we see a similar, maybe not so much, but a similar level of efficiency gain. So by quicker processing large data sets, improved portfolio management, improved risk management, improved analysis of market trends. So a lot of these things are being picked up by the models to run through either machine learning to help inform. And again, we see this improved outcome directly linking to bottom line, to ROI and margin through optimizing your portfolio management. So again, these tools, not so much how much you're going to save on headcount costs, it's how am I performing better for my customers. We actually see in what we've seen transitioning around the market already, we see that the headcount's probably going to stay similar, but it does require an increase in upskilling in order to be able to operate in this new space. So while we saw loan officers potentially dropping a little bit and moving further up the chain, we see the headcount in financial analysts remaining about the same, but again, transitioning more towards operating these AI tools. So an AI operator and an AI analyst, output analyst, rather than the number crunching that's traditionally been this role. These models, however, often take a bit more time to get right inside environments. So what we have seen in terms of, you can get fast deployments, but in terms of successful deployments that are delivering value, delivering on their promise, we see that those can take up to between 12 and 18. So a slightly longer time frame to deliver value.
Why is that?
Our assessment from the outside, again, this is an area of expertise, but from the outside, it does look like it's about the amount of time to train on the right data relevant to the business. So there's a heap of stuff in there about market, about finance in general, but not everybody is a generalist. They have reasonably niche areas of focus, and that takes some time to get the models right.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. And it's even one of the conversations I was having with the customer the other day. It's like one, it's like, is there AI potential? Two, what's the cost of actually building the AI itself? Because in some of the big models, they're very expensive to pull all the data together. And that was where I was trying to understand, does that sound like what I was hearing from, this really big customer? So that makes complete sense.
Yeah, and I mean, there's generally those four areas of focus. From our point of view, is there a platform or a product or an expectation that AI or automation or robotics or IoT can deliver value? If there is, what's the level of value that can return over what you're getting at the moment? So maybe it's a marginal improvement that's not worth pursuing. And then what's the time frame to actually realizing the benefits? So 12 to 18 months here is realizing the full benefits. You should be able to see something quicker, we would expect, but really to deliver on the promise, we've seen in areas this takes a little bit longer to do. And then on the customer side, there's actually, and what is the cost of doing this? The cost of the business, cost of
I would love to build the model. I would love to build the model for which do you build, buy, borrow, or you know what I mean? Like the AI itself. Like I think that's on the horizon too. Because that would be epic, to see that kind of insight. So it's like, where do I go? What costs the most pain or cost me the most money? What is the impact on the size of my workforce? What will the likely impact in ROI be? And then actually, how long is this going to take before I start seeing value? Like, it's a really great way of thinking about when you're redesigning your workforce, and then that whole net new skills required because of the net new tasks. So the key skills required to then complete these new jobs, this is where it becomes really interesting as well.
And those four elements, like different organizations have different risk profiles and different considerations, so they carry different weight. But those four things together allow an organization to come up with their roadmap. Like, what's my prioritized roadmap? What's for my outcomes, for the way my business runs, for what we value, what should we be chasing first?
Yep,
But we're
that
not
makes
done.
complete sense.
Let's
No,
jump
no,
into
keep going
compliance
on compliance, my favorite topic.
Okay, we love it. We love it. Again, like looking across the top line opportunities here, they're all about the same in terms of the amount of upside, the amount of operational efficiency. This one's between 45 and 55. So we're all talking around that 50% uptick. And again, this one's focused in a way that's similar to a lot of cybersecurity tools. So it's about on identifying fraud detection, suspicious transactions. It's about monitoring for regulatory compliance, and it's about those activities which are not dissimilar to a lot of the other technologies, but applied specifically to the compliance regulations around finance. And these are only growing. So when we look at headcount here, while the tools are going to, like we said, 50% a decent improvement in operational efficiency, but we still see these roles potentially maintaining and growing 10 to 15% because of the increased weight and pressure of regulations and compliance. When we're looking at blockchain, crypto, decentralized finance, we're looking at globalization of funding streams. We're seeing a lot more of an increase, and we're applying to that. I don't know, Paris Accord and ESG obligations for sustainable
Yep.
finance. All of this stuff that's coming to bear in an industry that's now got to make sure that everybody has complete transparency in the processes that are being run. So, compliance, regulatory, risk management, audits, accountants. While there's tools are significantly improving their ability to deliver output, these roles will continue to grow. Again, the ability to avoid regulatory penalties is straight to the bottom line. So this isn't margin on top of delivering service. This is straight to the bottom line. If you don't have to pay a penalty, that sits in your profit line. So a significant opportunity by improving your ability to deliver on that. I've mentioned quickly, expanding regulations likely to increase headcount. These tools, again, given that the regulatory framework can be applied generally across a range of organizations, we can see that some of these areas are quite stable and can be deployed quickly. So again, these ones are on can get the tooling quick, can get your people tooled up quickly, can get the value quickly.
Talk us through the sort of AI potential index. I mean, give everyone like what is the AI potential index again, and then tell me a bit more about like what actually are you seeing?
Yep, AI potential index is does it exist at the moment to deliver value? So is there proofs in market that deliver value? And then we risk balance that assessment, risk adjust it for how mature is the technology. And had an interesting conversation last week about this in the retail space, looking at the automation of removal of cashiers and automated checkouts. After 18 months, we worked out there was a whole change in profile with customer engagement and also fraud. So move forward 18 months and we've got people back in stores doing a slightly different role, similar people doing a slightly different role. So the AI potential index is risk adjusted for that maturity. We're using time as a proxy for getting to a stable outcome. So what we want to know there is there something that's real? And how likely is it to deliver value? Operational efficiency looks at how much more value could it deliver than what you're seeing at the moment. So either your position, if we've got details about a customer, or the standard industry position. So how much more value can it deliver above what you're able to achieve at the moment? And we try and weight that against the things that are actually valuable for the organization. So there's a heap of things you could be doing, but these are things that are leading to the value outcomes that you want. Time to benefits realization, I said, is the point at which we believe that you will see the promise delivered. So you would expect to see improvements reasonably quickly, not the full set of promises delivered. So what's the time frame before your people are up and humming, the systems are up and humming, you're achieving on the promise? So they're kind of the three metrics that we use. You've also mentioned the cost. We don't look at that at the moment. The customers, we work with them to look at that. But these three are part of the four that we think really bear on the decisions, and each customer may weigh them differently. On the way through, you would have noticed these three, the financial analysts, risk and compliance, front of house, bank tellers, customer, they were very similar in terms of metrics. So it really came down to time to benefit as a differentiating. So loan underwriting and compliance automation really snuck ahead of the others in terms of reliably delivering the highest value,
Yep.
fastest.
So if I was the CEO of one of these companies and the metrics looked all quite similar and we tried to decide which one to go after first, I would look at what causes us the most pain.
Yeah,
Like if cost is net the same, really then there's going to be something that either causes your customers the most pain or causes your employees the most pain. I mean, I think from a risk perspective, risk is probably one of the most sensitive things that I would be thinking about as a CEO. I'd be thinking about compliance and risk, and I would be thinking about making sure I get all my underwriting correct because that costs us truckloads of cash when we get it wrong. So I think for me, I would go there before I would go financial analyst personally. And this is the thing, guys, when you're thinking about this new world of work, like it's not like all tasks have high potential for automation and AI, but it really comes down to like you want humans to do the most valuable part of the role, but you also want to go after the things that are really causing you pain because you can't overwhelm your workforce and overnight just decide to be AI first. Like that's not going to happen. A company like me, sure, because I can control my destiny and I'm not a Navy ship. But these companies, I would say if I was one of the CEOs and I had this data as a workforce strategist, what I would say, presenting this data up to your CEO, I would then ask Jamie, what causes the most pain? I mean, pain we could probably see if we're connected into the work data, of the customer, and we can see probably
yeah,
tickets and things that are coming through, whether it's pain or cost. But I think that's really where we are decision making supporting here, and you need to add your kind of layer of expertise on top of this as well. It's really good, Mike.
yeah. No, absolutely. Just on that, and I think relevant to this as well is that first of all, how am I going to stay in business? And then if I'm
Mm,
in business, how am I going to influence the customer to make a brand choice to join me? So Jamie's comment was all about the brand, the customer experience. But I think
yep.
if you're not going to be able to stay in business, if you're not going to be able to comply with regulations, or if you've got your loan underwriting all wrong and you're making bad bets, then you are out of business. You don't have to worry about your customer brand because you're out of business. So I think
Yep.
that's the kind of trend, that's the weighting that I think we would have. But again, it's going to be what's your CEO worried about, and they're talking about these things. So loan underwriting, risk management, they lead the areas for underwriting, both in operational efficiency and AI potential and time to benefit. So those are, if your CEO is probably going to say, if we're not doing something, why aren't we doing something in this area?
Mm-hmm.
The question
Yep.
might start off more polite, say, what are we doing in this area? But it really means, are we moving fast enough? Your mate Jamie, and I think the CEO of Citibank, who didn't make, it's pretty tough when Citibank doesn't make, and Goldman Sachs don't make your slide of three CEOs. But if you're going to bump Goldman Sachs and Citibank, it's going to be for a reason. They also focused on the customer experience, that there's an empathy, and that there's the human intuition on the
Yep.
financial services side that does have value. They do value. So customer relationship management and financial analysis. And then again, the ability to deliver a platform is only increasing as your traditional markets are moving to digital platforms, as we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing fintech and other digital platforms coming in. Cybersecurity that is only just increasing as a core platform that your infrastructure is built on.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. It does. And I think like, this is the constant why we're doing this is like, you've now got this data. What are you going to do with that? And how are the conversations you're having internally going to change? So this is really helpful. The thing that, now we know how to be really bold. So the focus in that part of the session was about being really bold, how to reinvent, how to, redesign your workforce, adopt AI, think about new technologies, look at workforce bloat, and they all sound like, really serious kind of decision making. The outcome, whether you like it or not, when you start to reinvent your workforce, will be that there will be impacts to folks, whether that's to, folks have now got more capacity to take on more meaningful work, or whether there's actually, a direct impact on like all of the job or most of the job, which then would require sort of, a rethink or a pivot or what we would call a rejig to the rule. And a lot of what I'm quite obsessed about, and have been pretty much my whole career, is how do you build a skill building powerhouse within your organization? We're not talking like every year we decide that these are the future jobs based on somebody told us that these were future jobs in our sector, and we're now going to start diverting all traffic towards that. what I'm talking about, a skill building powerhouse, is this always on understanding of how work is changing over time within your organization. Because in order for you to build the right reskilling and the right pivoting, it has to be based on how you evolve your jobs as a workforce rather than just random jobs that are created because some futurist said that they're going to be the jobs in finance. Actually, the evolution and the skill building comes from as you start to take tasks out of your current jobs and bring AI in, you will create net new tasks, and that these net new tasks require new skills, and that is how our jobs are going to evolve in this next phase. And that is not a once a year our L&D team do the strategy. This is an always on constant evolution and constant. This is why I'm talking about skill building powerhouses, because it never stops. The engine keeps going. So, for me, it's really important that we rethink. And I think a lot of the learning strategies that I'm hearing about right now, I'm pretty frustrated by them, because it's like, guys, you're not paying attention to the actual job itself and how work evolves. These new jobs only get created when we actually change the current job. So we got to start there first. So, Mike, really want to know how you think about, the skill building powerhouse. Tell me about how we can sort of pivot folks into this meaningful work, because that is the most important thing around this bold and responsible strategy, is that every single person in the world has access to meaningful work. So how are we going to make sure that we're not only showing up to the CEO and saying, hey, I know how to be really bold, but also I'm going to make sure that you are really responsible and that we as a company do the right thing to everybody by giving them access to that meaningful work. Talk me through that.
Okay. I'll do my best. Keep me in
Sorry,
lane.
I get a bit on my high horse about this one, because for me, this one is the most frustrating thing. Like, the thing that I have found to be the most frustrating thing about the space right now is the approach to learning. Feels like we're all still on our dinosaurs a little bit, and they're not considering the actual impact of the work today. Like, new jobs don't just come out of trees. Like, they actually are created because you make some shift to your current work today that requires new tasks, that require new skills. That is how this works. And I'm going to write a whole thing on this, because I've been thinking about this one and having these arguments quite a lot recently with folks. And I have just watched folks not do this well, and the impact to the individual is terrible, and the cost of the business is terrible. And I think it's very disconnected from L&D's kind of like sitting out on this little island right now, not directly connected. So anyway, keep going. Sorry.
So that's good. No, you've got to get to it. Write it down before you explode.
I can see the comments. I keep getting, if you see me distracted on my phone, I can see people like WhatsApping me, LinkedIning me. All of my social is going back and forth in DM. So and people are agreeing with me, which I like. So
Okay.
keep going, Mike. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good to hear. I'm going to run through only a couple of the roles for which there's risk around the transformation of work and the implications of that for those elements of the workforce, and give some paths that we see are already or can be imminent in giving these existing roles sustainable careers in the future. As you said, we're really looking at those roles which are linked directly to a transformation of the business, transformation of the way work's being done. So what we've focused on that, and I think that's material because there's a couple of instances that we've seen in some of these areas where there are different paths available based on the skills that an individual has acquired during their time in the finance industry that can be applied in different ways. So I'll kind of pick those up on the way through. But we're going to run through front of house bank tellers. We're going to run through financial analysts. We'll run through some of the loan processors, loan officers. Let's go. Okay. And interesting, you called out the cost of learning as a bit of a pain point here. I noticed on the analysis here that a few of them, the ROI was actually linked to the value compared to the spend on learning. So there is a real strong narrative on the value that you can get through upskilling, reskilling, pivoting people to retain the investment that you've made. But really, by comparing the spend that you need to do to get the individuals ready against the value of not having to find them, having to move these people out and find other people. So it's interesting in a couple of these roles that the ROI was really focused on a multiple of the investment in reskilling. Um, Back to the detail. So bank tellers already have experience frontline customer interactions and a level of knowledge about the products that customers are using, to give them some level. So they're not a loan officer, but they can direct queries. And the transition there is to what we've seen called digital concierge in some other areas,
Mm.
digital banking advisor, customer service specialist, leveraging the AI tools which are on their way to support that. The upskilling there is around digital banking platforms, around AI assisted service tools. We also see that there's a upskilling in the platform to engage with the customer. So not just the digital platform, but how your personality arrives in a customer interface. So they're kind of the skills that are needed. But again, not a heavy lift here, and you're leveraging understanding of the product, understanding of the customers and the customers' needs, particularly in retail. This one's focusing on into this new world of work. There's plenty of courses either within organisations to deliver this, or across existing learning providers that can bring these kind of skills from an introductory or beginner level, but give an individual enough awareness and skill to get into the playing field. What we see on the right hand side, then the ROI, significant retention, but again, you're retaining people who have existing relationships in a number of instances with customers. So you're investing in those relationships that you've already got. The cost of turnover can be reasonable. The cost of reskilling is small, and the value prop here is large. Like the ability
Mm.
to leverage these people who've already got the interactions, already got some experience, and are already carrying product knowledge gives you a huge opportunity. There's also an opportunity for the individuals to increase their value to the organisation too. So now they're able to service more customers, not just the ones that walk in the door, but customers from a range of geographies or a range of industries. So we're able to upskill them to deliver more value. So the individual themselves are more valuable. If I look at financial analysts, and this is not just constrained to the finance industry, we see financial analysts sit within finance or ops, comms, account systems across a range of enterprise customers. The ability to move them more into data analysts is in line with the amount of tooling that's starting to emerge in this space. So they're across the financial reporting, they're across data management, but we want to move them into data analytics. And again, that operator space, you are now the operator of the AI financial model. So how do we understand which levers we want to pull there to ensure that we're getting the best value out of that, the highest level of accuracy, what's it training on? So it's really moving them from that historic financial reporting role into an AI data analyst role, but specifically inside the finance domain. And again, this is a reasonably mature space, so there are a number of courses already available. Like I kept saying through this session that the finance industry was kind of has lent into the adoption of AI automation to really identify value. So there's already a reasonably mature set of learnings and courses available, again, internally or externally, to support that kind of a transition. More expensive resources than bank tellers when we look across the balance. So a higher cost of turnover. Cost of reskilling slightly more expensive because we're probably talking about more value ascribed courses. But again, we're seeing between a 5 and a 10x return, this time based on throughput. So last time we were talking about the value as a multiple of the value achieved as a multiple of the reskilling cost. This is looking on a value as a multiple of the processing speed. How quickly are they getting through the same amount of transaction data to achieve an outcome? And that's a 5 to 10x. So it's significant. So we talked about how this flows through to revenue generation when we talked about this role as part of operational efficiency. Again, moving into this data analyst space, expertise in AI is incredibly valuable for the individual concerned as well. So we anticipate that they're producing a lot more value for the organisation. They will be more valuable as an individual. So we're already seeing an immediate uptick in their value. And this is maybe a slightly longer training course. Maybe it's more specific to the particular products and vendors that are in use in an organisation. But again, 3 to 6 months for a transition and a pivot into this new world of work,
Yeah.
not a long time.
Yep.
That's okay. Super excited. I know this is very exciting. That's where all the money lives. So, well, this is where somebody's giving you somebody else's money. Loan processors, loan officers. Interestingly, when we looked at the paths here, again, in line with the way we were framing the questions, we're transitioning these roles based on their skills to roles related to the AI tooling in the future. So having a skill set in loan processing, having a skill set in compliance knowledge, what's required in order to consider a loan application, and the risking around it, transitioning those skills or enhancing those skill sets to understand more about the AI risk assessment techniques and loan assessment. So more about the tooling, again, reasonably straightforward, but potentially lined up with the vendors. The other part that we've seen in loan processors and loan officers, particularly in retail banking or in branch banking, is that they have a deep knowledge of their particular line of loans, whether it's retail loans, whether it's commercial loans. That deep depth of product knowledge we've seen has also been able to transition into digital product owners. So where we're moving banking platforms from brick and mortar into digital banking, we have seen your branch staff, your loan officers in the branch transition successfully into the digital product owner for that stream on the basis of their deep understanding both of the lending product, but also of the needs of the customers. They're the ones who are sitting down there and having those, why do you need this? What's your collateral? Understanding of the actual mechanisms of the whole life cycle of the loan. And so while the example here looked at opportunities that lean into the new tooling and technologies, we have also seen that transformation to digital banking, as an example, give individuals the ability to leverage their product and customer knowledge into a product manager role, a digital product manager role. If I'm looking at this particular example again, it's reasonably mature. So AI around auditing and AI around risk management, there's a range of courses currently available. Again, we're talking about a 50 to 60% increase in throughput. Again, slightly more expensive individuals, so a higher cost of turnover, but also a very high level of potential retention if we're helping people adjust on these parts, so 25 to 30%. And the value for the individual, again, in this instance, as a result of this move, they are significantly more valuable, delivering more value to their employer, and they are potentially more valuable as an individual. And we've seen between a 7 and a 10K uptick there.
The thing that it's funny because I disconnected from the fact that I run Reejig to pretend like that I was back in my old role for a second there. That was just a really weird moment. But it's like, so the use of the data then becomes, if I can tell you where the AI potential is, I can tell you based on cost and pain, I can tell you the likely savings that you will get from moving this way from an operational efficiency perspective and AI implementation. I then can tell you the net new task curation and where the reskilling will need to happen. I can tell you how much it's going to cost the business to roughly, reskill their folks. Like, this is brilliant. This is really good because it's like, it kind of like takes it through, like, I was just imagining being the CEO or presenting into that CEO in my old role and talking about this. It kind of gives you that like roadmap, and then when the likely realization will be. And also when we're looking at productivity metrics, like all major companies look at, the revenue per employee basis and stuff like that. I just think it's a really strong, it takes workforce strategy and HR from being this kind of fluffy thing to like innovators, to transformers, to change agents, to enablers of this new bold and responsible, because it answers both bold and responsible. I was just disconnected from that as the host and actually watching it as a viewer for a second, and I was like, this is good. I'm going to use this data somewhere. No, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think, like, was there any, before I kind of start getting this wrapping up, but was there any other kind of key insights that you thought, or did I just interrupt you?
No. So you didn't. I thought I might have put you to sleep. So I'm glad that you were very focused and
No, I was
concentrated.
actually genuinely. I'm kind of managing being host, and I keep getting people texting me, WhatsApping me, and DMing me on LinkedIn So I'm like trying to keep on top of responding to the questions there while also making sure that like I'm also paying attention to what I'm listening to your data. Like
Yeah.
I'm at like being in that place where I'm
Yeah.
solving this problem.
The one thing I didn't touch on here, and it kind of emerged through the analysis, is that across the financial industry, there are within organizations, even across business units, across role groups and job families, there are a significant amount of tasks that are sufficiently duplicated that we think there's a real opportunity for efficiency there by taking these roles and consolidating them, either outsourcing them, offshoring them, putting them in specific roles who are delivering that service back to the organization to free up people who are all trying to do the same thing in slightly different ways, and come up with a task consolidation approach which delivers operational value there. So I think the finance industry is one of those which I think really strongly supports the why are we all trying to do the same thing?
Yep.
Is there opportunity to bring some of it together? I think that's another conversation, something that we can maybe look at
Yep.
alongside this. But that's something that I think in finance, particularly when we're thinking about the way work is done and work is structured, separate from the AI, separate from automation. I think there's an opportunity to move that work to the workers, which is your language exactly.
Yep. What like I got said differently, but pretty much the same question. I got one on a DM on LinkedIn and I got one on WhatsApp while we were kind of debating that whole how do you know where to learn? And basically the question was, how do you know which like the future jobs to enable like to create your workforce strategies on for learning? Um, and what I have seen typically is customers, I don't know where they get the data, but someone gives them data or they do their own research and they find out that these jobs are these magical new jobs of the future. No idea where these people make these bases because the AI companies don't even know how fast this will evolve and what the impacts are. So I don't know who the futurists are who are predicting these, but they're predictions. They're not like facts. That would be one kind of thing that I would say. But traditionally, what happens in learning is someone identifies the future capabilities based on who knows what data or how, but someone has taken a good stab and good guess at that. Most of the time they're wrong, but anyway. Um, and secondly, then they buy an LXP or they invest millions of dollars into a learning transformation program. And then they buy a whole pile of technology and buy libraries upon libraries of learning. They then hammer it into the employees and say, this is our future capabilities. And here's millions of courses that you should think about for these jobs. And that's typically the learning strategy, right? And I actually think that that is one, a waste of money, two, a waste of the employee's time. Three, most of the time, I would take a bet that the jobs that everyone's selling right now that are the future jobs, they're wrong. Like a lot of the stuff that you see around the data of the future jobs, I'm like, based on what though? Like, who told you that? Because how do you know? And the thing that I think everyone needs to remember is that sure, there'll be jobs creation in the future, but like we're not talking about net, like 100% of jobs being completely removed here. In this next 2 to 5 years, what you will see is there will be tasks of a job that will drastically change and be automated by technology, right? But the whole job does not go, right? So it becomes here are the tasks that have AI potential or like digital. We see a lot of digital factories now coming around in the US. What are the tasks that are being impacted and have high potential? We look at that. And then when you bring in those technologies, what are the net new tasks that have to happen within the workforce to enable those technologies? And if you think it at a really simplistic level, that when you bring in, someone, I was having this conversation with someone over dinner the other night, and it's a very basic example, but it's right. It's an analogy of like this is where we're going. When the Whole Foods and the retailers of the Coles and the Woolies of the world brought in cashless servers and they removed that and it became sort of self-service, they didn't anticipate the amount of theft that would happen. And now what they had to do was build in all these other tasks and build in either new human roles, human in the loop, or they brought in new technologies to identify. Like I couldn't even get out of Coles a couple of weeks ago when I was in Sydney because they got all these new gates and stuff. And that's because the amount of theft that's happening across the retailers right now because self-service. So when you think about the impact of tasks, sure, humans can serve themselves and we can have this technology that enables them to self-serve. What are the new tasks that are created? And I am obsessed with net new tasks, as you know, right now around, okay, so if we bring in new AI, then okay, well, what has to happen to enable that to happen? Because it doesn't just come in and everything, it's different and there's new things to do. How do we know what those new things are? And then that is where you need to think about where the impacts of reskilling are. Because suddenly you have a person who now has to manage a robot. Suddenly you have a person who has to work in a different way. And when we're thinking about, you know, Reejig can tell you the AI impact of whether or not it is a little bit of the job, and this is where it's the AI potential index, right? It's a little bit of the job, some of the job, or all of the job. And that should be a basis for how you think about your reskilling and your learning strategies, because it's dependent on what is the net impact to the work, and then where are we going to go next. And I think that is the first thing that learning folks should be thinking about, is that, like, rather than these kind of picked out of the clouds new jobs, like, honestly, see, when I read those reports, I'm like so dismissive of them now, because I'm like, show me the facts that back up that thesis, because that's an idea. And all of these learning folks are driving so much energy and driving millions and millions of employees to reskill into these jobs. And see, if you get that wrong, it's not about money wasted. It's about you are wasting someone's time over a long period of time where they're investing into learning into jobs that won't exist. And that we cannot do. And that is what I've seen that's happened, which makes me feisty, Mike, because over the last 5 years, that has been the strategy of learning. And by the way, all the jobs that we sent people to reskill, and I'm talking vulnerable jobs, highly digital factory style jobs that were sent down the wrong path to reskill, have invested a whole pile of time. Some of these folks are working two jobs, right? Just to pay their mortgages and look after a family while reskilling at the same time. And this is where I'm kind of like, no, we need to do this differently. And so the questions that I'm getting are similar with the angle of like, this is the way I think we need to think about reskilling first. And that's the focus area where your money should be going, so that you're protecting, not only making sure that people are having access to meaningful work, but you're not wasting their time by getting them to do jobs that won't exist because they don't know, neither do you. So it's like, how do we know? Well, you analyze the AI potential and the impacts first, and then think about pivoting, then think about reskilling. That's the way that I would solve it. And I think, like, this is where our industry needs to think differently. This is this reinvention component that I'm talking about, that you cannot keep doing the same thing that we've been doing. It hasn't worked. Let's be honest. Skills-based hasn't worked. The way we've been doing learning hasn't worked. So let's just start from day zero and we all kind of clean slate. And what would we do? Well, one, we look at reinvention of our workforce. Get yourself a work ontology, deeply understand the work that's happening within your company, understand the intelligence that comes along with AI impacts. Where is the task duplication? Where are the blockers to productivity? How do we think about integrating fixed workers, flex workers, digital workers, all within the same workforce? Number one, that's where your time should be going right now, because that is what your CEO cares about. Anything else other than that right now is a vitamin. It is not a painkiller. So focus your energy there right now. And then think about moving work to worker. It is not about giving people jobs. It is about, as an organization, you have work. How do we distribute and orchestrate work to worker? And then finally, how do we make sure that we leave no one behind with our pivoting and our reskilling and retention strategies? That's really where we think about that from the Reejig perspective. And I think as you think about this, the impact will be a clear roadmap to adopt AI. You will increase productivity and velocity across your workforce. You will create this beautiful culture of opportunity where no one gets left behind. That's the dream state. Like, this is like where we want to get to. And I would highly recommend everyone goes back to day zero and chuck out all the stuff that you thought you had before and think about it like this, because you will design something completely different and probably way cheaper than all the strategies that you've been doing in terms of understanding how to solve these problems. Now, this was an incredibly exciting session with data. There's probably more impacts than I realize when we think about the finance sector. You know, remember that the work ontologies that we're showcasing are based on big industry data. by understanding sort of the tasks and the skills required to complete tasks. And then we analyze the data to help you sort of think about mobilizing and reinventing of your workforce. If you found this session valuable, imagine what you could achieve if we did this for your company. And I'm not saying, that you need to run towards the fire really quickly and start buying Reejig. What I'm saying is we can run these personalized masterclasses for your company with a tiny little bit of work data. We can actually start to think about your workforce and bring you on that journey to day zero think with your own personalized masterclasses. We've got a team of workforce strategists who will provide tailored intelligence specifically for your business. I want to thank you all for joining us today. This was a little bit more spicy than normal because I think I've had so many conversations where I'm like, oh, I'm getting frustrated. I can't wait to see where we're going next week. I don't even know until I go to the next slide. Oh, we're going after education next week. Exciting. Mike, as always, thank you for taking the time out to share all of the information and what you are learning about all things workforce intelligence. It is incredible. Join us next week, folks, for the Skills Masterclass where we're going to unpack the education industry. Until then, here's to creating a world with zero wasted potential. See you, folks.
See ya.